The decline and fall of the Roman Republic, 133 to 31 BCE. I do want to briefly compare Roman and Chinese roads. The Romans constructed a remarkable system of roads. It was first started by the Etruscans. After laying a foundation of gravel which allowed for drainage, the Roman builders topped it with flagstones closely fitted together. Unlike other peoples who built similar kinds of roads, the Romans did not follow the contours of the land, but made their roads as straight as possible to facilitate communications and transportation, especially for military purposes. Seen in the Appian Way, built in 312 BCE to make it easy for Roman armies to march from Rome to the newly conquered city of Capua, a distance of 152 miles. By the beginning of the 4th century CE, the Roman Empire contained 372 major roads covering 50,000 miles. And so one of the first roads, the Appian Way, built by Appius, was one of the first roads to be built, common to the American interstate. Like the Roman Empire, the Han Empire relied on roads constructed with stone slabs for the movement of military forces. The first emperor of Qin was responsible for the construction of 4,350 miles of roads. And by the end of the 2nd century CE, China had almost 22,000 miles of roads. Although roads in both the Roman and Chinese empires were originally constructed for military purposes, they came to be used for communications and commercial traffic as well. And so we see in 370, we see that Rome had about 50,000 miles of coverage, while the Chinese Han Empire had about 22,000 miles of coverage. And we might ask the question, what was the importance of roads to the Roman and Han empires? Concerning the decline and fall of the Roman Republic, by the middle of the 2nd century BCE, Roman domination of the Mediterranean was complete. Yet the process of creating an empire had weakened the internal stability of Rome, leading to a series of crises that plagued the Roman Republic for the next 100 years. By the 2nd century BCE, the Senate had become the effective governing body of the Roman state. It comprised 300 men, drawn primarily from the landed aristocracy. They remained senators for life and held the chief magistracies of the Republic. The Senate directed the wars of the 3rd and 2nd centuries and took control of both foreign and domestic policy, including financial affairs. Of course, these aristocrats formed only a tiny minority of the Roman people. The backbone of the Roman state had traditionally been the small farmers, but over time, many small farmers had found themselves unable to compete with the large, wealthy landowners and had lost their lands. By taking over state-owned land and by buying out small peasant owners, these landed aristocrats had amassed large estates called latifundia, that used slave labor. Thus, the rise of latifundia contributed to a decline in the number of small citizen farmers who were available for military service. Moreover, many of these small farmers drifted into the cities, especially that of Rome, forming a large class of landless poor. Some aristocrats tried to remedy this growing economic and social crisis. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, came to believe that the underlying cause of Rome's problems was the decline of the small farmer. To help the landless poor, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus bypassed the Senate by having the council of the plebs pass land reform bills that called for the government to reclaim public land held by large landowners and to distribute it to landless Romans. Many senators, themselves large landowners whose estates included the broad tracts of public land, were furious about this. A group of senators took the law into their own hands and murdered Tiberius in 133 BCE. Gaius later suffered the same fate. The attempts of the Gracchus brothers to bring reforms had opened the door to further violence. Changes in the Roman army soon brought even worse problems. In the closing years of the 2nd century BCE, a Roman general named Marius began to recruit his armies in a new way. The Roman army had traditionally been a conscript army of small farmers who were landholders. Marius recruited volunteers from both the urban and rural poor who possessed no property at all. These volunteers swore an oath of loyalty to the general, not the Senate, and thus constituted a professional type army no longer subject to the state. Moreover, to recruit these men, the generals would promise them land, forcing the generals to play politics in order to get laws passed that would provide the land promised to their veterans. Marius had created a new system of military recruitment that placed much power in the hands of individual generals. And so we see this as a stepping stone. The reforms of the Gracchus brothers, as well as the different recruitment system put in place by Marius. The 1st century BCE was characterized by two important features: the jostling for dominance of a number of powerful individuals, the generals rather, and the civil wars generated by their conflicts. 3 individuals came to hold enormous military and political power. We have first Crassus, we have Pompey, and Julius Caesar. Crassus was known as the richest man in Rome and led a successful military command against a major slave rebellion. Pompey had returned from a successful military command in Spain in 71 BCE and had been hailed as a military hero. Julius Caesar also had a military command in Spain. In 60 BCE, Caesar joined with Crassus and Pompey to form a coalition that historians have called the First Triumvirate. Triumvirate in Latin means 3-man rule. The combined wealth and influence of these 3 men was enormous, enabling them to dominate the political scene and achieve their basic aims. Pompey received a command in Spain, Crassus a command in Syria, and Caesar a special military command in Gaul, or what is now known as modern France. When Crassus was killed in battle in 53 BCE, his death left 2 powerful men with armies in direct competition. Caesar had conquered all of Gaul and gained fame, wealth, and military experience, as well as an army of seasoned veterans who were loyal to him. When leading senators endorsed Pompey as the less harmful to their cause and voted for Caesar to lay down his command and return as a private citizen to Rome, Caesar refused. He chose to keep his army and moved into Italy illegally by crossing the Rubicon River, the river that formed the southern boundary of his province. Caesar marched on Rome and defeated the forces of Pompey and his allies, leaving Caesar in complete control of the Roman government. Caesar was officially made dictator in 47 BCE, and 3 years later was named dictator for life. Realizing the need for reforms, he gave land to the poor and increased the Senate to 900 members. He also reformed the calendar by introducing the Egyptian solar year of 365 days, with later changes in the year 1582 CE. It became the basis of our own calendar. Caesar planned much more in the way of building projects and military adventures in the East, but in 44 BCE, a group of leading senators assassinated him. And so as we see, he reformed the calendar by introducing the Egyptian solar year of 365 days. And of course, later that would be changed in the year 1582 and would become the basis of our calendar at the present day. Within a few years after Caesar's death, 2 men had divided the Roman world between them. Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew and adopted son, took the western portion, and Antony, Caesar's ally and assistant, the eastern half. But the empire of the Romans, large as it was still too small for 2 masters, and Octavian in the west and Antony in the east eventually came into conflict. Antony allied himself closely with the Egyptian queen, Cleopatra the Seventh. At the Battle of Actium in Greece in 31 BCE, Octavian's forces in the west smashed the army and navy of Antony and Cleopatra, who both fled to Egypt, where they committed suicide a year later. Octavian, at the age of 32, stood supreme over the Roman world. The civil wars had ended, and so had the Republic. And we see that Octavian was Caesar's grandnephew and adopted son. And next we will go over the Roman Empire at its height, the age of Augustus, the early empire, and then we'll go over the crisis and that of the late empire and the end of the Western Roman Empire. Before moving on to the transformation of Roman culture by Christianity, and then we'll hop on over to the glorious Han Empire.